Thursday, May 19th, at Public Safety Committee, the Minister of Public Safety confirmed that he stood by his statement in Parliament on May 2nd that, quote, on the recommendation of law enforcement, we invoked the Emergencies Act, end quote. We now know that police did not make this recommendation, and his own deputy minister said yesterday that he was misunderstood. When did it become acceptable for a minister of this House to spread misinformation?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, let me, over the heckling of my colleagues who I know are
Are we ready to proceed? The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland asks the question. I think he wants to hear the answer. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy to give it by refreshing his memory and all members in this chamber's memory that last winter we experienced an unprecedented public order emergency in the opinion of law enforcement, which is why prior to invoking the Emergencies Act, we sought their advice on the powers that were needed to restore public safety. And let me quote from Commissioner Lucky's testimony before the committee when she said, and I'm going to interrupt the Honourable Minister.
I just want to make sure we can hear that quote. Everybody's ready to listen? Okay, the Honourable Minister, please proceed.
From the top, Mr. Speaker. I was just about to say, Commissioner Lucky said the following: the Emergencies Act did give us the tools that we needed to get the job done quickly. We invoked the Emergencies Act to restore public safety. Was the right and responsible thing to do.
Well, member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Well, Mr. Speaker, our memories are very clear on this side of the House. The minister repeatedly stated that police recommended that the government invoke the Emergencies Act. Right. But now we know that not a single police force in this country made that recommendation. The minister has had multiple opportunities to clarify, but he stood by his statement. And now his deputy minister is saying, well, the minister was misunderstood. Who is telling the truth? The public safety minister or his most senior public servant?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I want to be absolutely clear that last winter, when we saw an unprecedented public order emergency in the opinion of law enforcement, we filled the gaps that existed within authorities which were not effective at the time to restore public safety. Prior to invoking the Emergencies Act, we sought the advice, as any responsible government would do, prior to invoking the Act. And you heard Commissioner Lucky say that we needed, for example, power to compel tow trucks as a result of protesters who wouldn't leave. I wonder why they wouldn't leave, Mr. Speaker. They wouldn't leave because Conservatives were egging them on to stay. That was wrong, and we invoked it to protect Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Public Safety knows the severity of invoking the Emergencies Act, the historical significance, the impact on due process and charter rights. The details of why and how this government invoked the Act are key. They will set a precedent in Canada on government powers, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sure the Minister would agree there is no room for being misunderstood when setting historical precedent. There is also no room for hiding cabinet documents from Justice Rouleau's inquiry. Will the Liberal government waive cabinet confidence and release the documents to Justice Rouleau?
The Honourable Minister.
As we said along, the government will cooperate with Justice Rouleau, will cooperate with the Joint Parliamentary Committee to be transparent, because I agree with my colleague that we need to scrutinize the invocation of the Emergencies Act, Mr. Speaker. My point is that the facts are very clear. We were in the midst and in the throes of an unprecedented public order emergency in the opinion of nonpartisan professional law enforcement, and when we sought their advice about which powers were needed to restore public safety, we listened to it and we invoked to restore public safety, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
The minister's being a bit vague on my question of whether his government's going to release the documents, and the question of cabinet confidence is critical to the Rouleau inquiry, as argued by former clerk of the Privy Council, who said cabinet confidence, quote, should not be utilized to impede the search of the truth where the validity of government action is seriously contested and the law demands that it be reviewed, as is the case with the recent declaration of emergency in response of the trucker convoy protest and blockade. So in other words, this is a really big deal, Mr. Speaker. Will the Liberals respect Justice Rouleau's request and hand over the cabinet documents, yes or no?
Great question. The Honourable
Emergencies Act. We did it to restore public safety after we sought the advice of law enforcement, Mr. Speaker. Following that, we commenced the public inquiry, giving
I'm sure the honourable member for Kildonan and St. Paul missed the first part, so maybe start right from the top, Mr. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we invoked the Emergencies Act to restore public safety. We did it following the conversations and consultations that we had with law enforcement, including on which powers were needed to restore public safety. At the conclusion of it, we revoked the Emergencies Act, and as part of that, we're now participating in an exercise of transparency, including with Judge Rouleau, who has the power to compel witnesses, documents, including classified information. Of course, the government will cooperate because we agree that the Act should be scrutinized so that it is never abused, Mr. Speaker, and we will always follow that principle. Thank you.
The honourable member.